Today, we're going to talk about what exactly inflammation is and what you can do about it today. I had a great question from one of the folks here at YouTube, and I wanted to share with you what that is exactly. So, before we get started, just love to remind you to please definitely sign up for the newsletter if you haven't already. There's a link down below, and also you can subscribe to the YouTube channel, and I'd love to have you as part of the community. All right, let's jump right in. So first of all, what is inflammation, right? So, it's a word that we hear often in discussions about health. It's not always quite clear what it really means. We know it means something maybe undesirable. It's often linked to things we care about, various diseases and conditions, but what is it exactly? Is it your cells or your tissues become inflamed? And how does this happen, right? And more importantly, what can you do about it right now? So we're going to break that down and what inflammation is, why it matters, and some practical steps you can take to manage it effectively to better your overall health. Okay, so first of all, understanding inflammation. It's your body's natural response to injury, infection, or what we can consider harmful stimuli, right? It's a protective mechanism, and it's designed to eliminate the cause of cell injury, clear out damaged tissues, and initiate the healing process. So you can think of it as your body's emergency response team, right? So, however, when that response becomes chronic, it can do more harm than good. All right, so let's jump to really what exactly gets inflamed. Well, there's three things I want to talk about. One is cells and your immune response, right? So inflammation begins really at the cellular level. When your body detects damage or a foreign invader like bacteria or viruses, it sends in immune cells like white blood cells to the affected area. Then those cells release chemicals like cytokines and some other things. They act like messengers to recruit more immune cells to the actual site. Then you have blood vessels, right? So the blood vessels around the affected area become more what we call permeable. That allows immune cells and nutrients and fluids to move out of the bloodstream into the tissues. So that's why you might see redness and swelling around a cut or an infection or an injury, right? It's your body's way of isolating the problem and providing the resources needed to initiate that healing process or repair process. And then finally, you have tissues and organs, right? So if the inflammation is widespread or systemic, it can affect multiple tissues and organs. And this is what happens with chronic inflammation or chronic inflammatory diseases like rheumatoid arthritis or lupus, where the immune system mistakenly attacks healthy tissues. Now, there are a couple of different types of inflammation we want to talk about. One is acute inflammation, right? That's the short-term immediate response to injury or infection. And you can think of it again as your body's first line of defense. It typically lasts maybe a few days and resolves once the underlying cause is addressed. You probably have experienced acute inflammation if you've ever had a cut or a bruise or an infection or like a twisted ankle or something. It became red, swollen, and painful. And over time, it resolved itself. But then you also have what we call chronic inflammation, right? So chronic inflammation, on the other hand, is a prolonged inflammatory response that can last for weeks, months, or even years, right? It occurs when the body fails to eliminate the cause of inflammation or when the immune system mistakenly targets healthy tissues, right? This type of inflammation is many times linked to chronic diseases, including heart disease, diabetes, cancers, some neurodegenerative conditions like Alzheimer's disease. And so what are the dangers of chronic inflammation? Well, remember that acute inflammation is necessary for healing. Chronic inflammation is harmful, and that can really lead to a range of health issues. So we kind of already mentioned them before, but with heart disease, you get chronic inflammation can lead to the buildup of plaque in arteries, and that's increasing the risk of heart attacks and strokes. Then you have diabetes. You can see inflammatory markers go up with insulin resistance, which of course is a key feature of type 2 diabetes. And then you have cancer. So chronic inflammation can damage DNA over time, and then which again can lead to the development of certain cancers. And then you have the autoimmune disease, which we discussed. Things like rheumatoid arthritis, lupus. The immune system mistakenly attacks its own tissues, and then that can lead to chronic inflammation and tissue damage. So what are the causes of chronic inflammation? Well, one that you hear about me talk about all the time is a poor diet, right? So diets that are high in sugar, Refined carbohydrates and ultra-processed foods can trigger inflammation. A sedentary lifestyle can lead to increased levels excuse me, of inflammatory markers in the body. Chronic stress, right? So ongoing stress in the body kind of keeps that body in a heightened state of alert, heightened alert, there we go, which can promote inflammation. And then you have environmental toxins, right? So pollutants, chemicals, other toxins can cause that chronic inflammation. Infections, right? Persistent infections that are not properly managed can lead to long-term inflammation. So what can you do about that right now? Well, there's good news. You can do lots of good things. And one of the things that I've seen that's been the most powerful with patients, you'll see a huge impact right away, is really adopting an anti-inflammatory diet, right? You want to focus on those whole nutrient-dense plant foods. Fruits and veggies, rich in antioxidants, phytochemicals, and those foods help combat what we call oxidative stress. You also want to make sure you're getting healthy fats like omega fats that are found in flax seeds, walnuts. These also help reduce inflammation. You want to avoid trans fats, which you'll find in ultra-processed foods, also saturated fats, which typically come from animal products. That can also reduce inflammation. Whole grains, things like quinoa, brown rice, whole oats, instead of what we call refined grains, right? Or really processed grains. And then you have herbs and spices. One, they make your food taste good, but they're also really known for their anti-inflammatory properties like turmeric, ginger, and garlic. Next, you want to exercise regularly, right? We talk about exercise all the time. It helps with better sleep. It helps with your insulin resistance, but it can also help lower inflammatory markers in your body. So you want to do aerobic things like walking, cycling, but also strength training, right? Because building that muscle is so very important in so many ways. So you want to do some type of resistance training or weight-bearing exercise. Next, we want to talk about managing stress. I talk about it all the time. It's like that sneaky little devil that just comes in and just wreaks havoc, right? So mindfulness is such a lovely approach to this, or meditation. You could do yoga, tai chi, some pretty decent studies on that. Also with deep breathing exercises. I've had patients who's like, I can't meditate because I'm so stressed out. What else could I do? We went over some different breathing exercises like box breathing, where you breathe in over 4, hold it for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4, and do that. You could do what we call 4-7-8 breathing, where you breathe in over 4, hold for 7, breathe out over 8, and repeat that 4 times. Lots of different ways to decreasing your stress. But mindfulness is really crucial because I think it changes your perspective on what you're focusing in on. So you're not focused on the future or the past, but the present moment. And that really has an amazing power to decrease your stress. Next is just getting good quality sleep. I think it's one of the first things that we are like, I can't, I'm too busy, I'm working out, I'll just, cut into my sleeping time. But unfortunately that leads to more problems the next day and more. So really, just remember, lacking sleep can really increase your inflammation. You want to shoot for that 7 to 9 hours a night. Limit your screen time, create your relaxing environment, avoiding the stimulants, try to get up early in the morning, get that morning sunlight. Again, so many things that I've talked about on this channel. Definitely want to try to make sure that you're doing every day if you can, because it all adds up. These small little things all add up to seeing big benefits. And finally, I'd say the one thing that I would encourage you to do is avoiding alcohol and smoking, right? Alcohol in any form, in any amount, is considered a toxin to the body. And so smoking we've known for a long time, but alcohol is absolutely harmful to the body in any amount. There's no data long-term when you look at the newer data, that any amount is not healthy. So if you're thinking, oh, well, what about, wine? Go eat the grapes and avoid the alcohol. So I know you're like, well, I can't do that, but at least try to do the other things. But just remember, inflammation is that double-edged sword, right? It's essential for healing, but when it comes chronic, it can be quite damaging. So the first thing I would encourage you to do is look at what's on your fork, try to bring in more anti-inflammatory foods, and that can definitely shift you towards a more anti-inflammatory living. Yeah, and so I hope you found that helpful. Some of the additionally, some labs that you might want to consider checking would be an HSCRP, so that's a high sensitivity CRP, which really kind of focuses in on your cardiac inflammation or your cardiac arteries, your heart arteries. If that's elevated above 1, you probably want to start working on getting that down. But also sed rate, and also if your white blood cells are chronically elevated, or platelets, that's another indication on your labs that you have inflammation in your body going on. So hope that's helpful, and thanks everyone for watching, and I'll be back next time, and I'll see you then. As always, sending gratitude, joy, and love, and healing, because we all need more of that in this world.